Welcome to the Show Me Casey Schools podcast, where we help families make well-informed decisions about their child's education. I'm Danielle, the Director of School Navigation with Show Me Casey Schools, and we really appreciate you tuning in to this episode. Today, we're recording another episode all about special education as a part of our special education series. This series has included helpful information and personal experiences to help others in navigating the complex world of special education. Today, I'm super excited. We're joined by Dr. Jumesha Wade and Arleen Martinez with Start at Zero. We're going to talk a lot about early childhood, the interventions that happen, and sometimes the steps that then lead us to early childhood special education. So thank you, ladies, for being here. I'm so excited.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're in the air conditioning because
with my blazer back on.
That's right. Even though we're in a massive heat advisory, just to give our listeners a little perspective on what's happening out there on the city streets. It's been pretty brutal. It's also given those of us who are parents a little bit of challenging days. With
just
closures.
extra time with our kids. We wanted that.
Yeah, no, we all thought we were going to have full days, and then they were like, just kidding. JK. We're sending them home. Hopefully their buses come. So today we are going to discuss the importance of early childhood and those interventions and special education interventions. And I really want to kick us off with you all telling us about Start at Zero and the work that you're doing in the community.
Yeah. So I'm the executive director at Start at Zero, and I've been here a little over 5 years now, and we're only about 7 years old. So that's quite a bit of time. I started as a parent educator, which is our home visiting program, And then I became the director of programs. And then, like I said, I'm the executive director now. And so at Start at Zero, we really focus on partnering with parents and caregivers to support healthy early childhood development. And we always say that word partnering, we always want to leave it in our mission because we can't do our work without actually working with parents. And so not like a typical center, like we go into the homes to work with parents on a voluntary basis. So that's the core programming, as we call it. I'll let Arleen introduce herself, and we can talk a little bit more about what we do.
Yes, my name is Arleen Martinez. I'm the director of program with Start at Zero. I've been with Start at Zero for 2 years, 8 months. I'm very excited about it. I really love the job we're doing. I've been a parent educator for quite a while.
How long? Tell them how long.
I've been a parent educator for 19 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
That. Thank you.
I used to work for the Belton School District, and I was so blessed that I found Start Zero. I always love working and helping families, but the job that Start Zero does is amazing. How we help our community, how we bring resources, suggestions, and having a parent educator that represents you is very important when we go to your home.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's really important to talk about as far as the choice that families have in those early childhood years. I know that for us, we have a 13 and an 11-year-old right now. So it feels like it was a lifetime ago. But we did, some preschool in the beginning. But to be completely honest, my hourly wage didn't cover childcare. And so, we ended up kind of pulling away from all of that and being at home. And so I think that a lot of times there's a lot of pressure on parents and caregivers to do this thing because you're being told that you should, or to do this thing. And you all are really coming in and just literally meeting families where they are in their homes, but then allowing them and providing them the resources to make a decision that works for their family.
Yeah, I think in such a choice landscape, it's only parents that even can the assumption is that you can make a decision about whether you stay home or not. Everybody can't make that decision. And then some families, it's not even about money. It's about who I trust with my kid. And so we hear from a lot of our parents, if children can't talk, if they can't tell them what's going on, then they don't want to put them in a center just yet. And they should have that option. And so what makes that difficult is like, what do you do? Because a parent is a parent. You're not an expert in early childhood development. And so typically people just think, oh, I'm playing with my kid, which play is learning, but they don't really start learning until they get to kindergarten. It's kind of what parents think, or that's when I'll start getting them ready, maybe pre-K. And I think now our city is getting more acquainted with like pre-K 3 and preschool. And so the conversation is shifting a little bit. But prior to having access to free pre-K 3, families were not willing and ready to send their children to centers or to the school district. And so we kind of have to balance that out. Like you can actually keep them at home, but here's ways that you can support their development. And so we start with you're your child's first and most important teacher. We use the Parents as Teachers curriculum. It's evidence-based curriculum. And so parents, from the moment we walk in, we're like, what can your child do? And a lot of us have that fear, like they're going to come in, they're going to evaluate them, they're going to tell me all the things that I'm doing wrong. And so, like you said, we really meet families where they are and let the child and our interactions with them tell us what they know and where we can help them grow.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I think so much of that, some of the fear too, from a parent perspective, is like all of the big words or the jargon or the, and so as you were, indicating that, a screening, that means that you're going to tell me a deficit instead of something positive. And so when you all go into the home and you are introducing families to developmental screenings, can you talk to me a little bit about what that looks like?
Yes, we use a tool called ASQ, Ages Stages Questionnaire. It's mostly a questionnaire that the parents do. But when I used to do it with my parents, I tell my girls too, when they go into the homes, is just talk to them and tell them this is a good tool to see what they're doing and what you can do for them. Children are, their brains are always developing. Yeah. So that, from 0 to 3, that brain develops in 80%. So you need to give them those, like, feed that brain, give those tools. So ASQ is a good tool. When you do this, you can see where the child at and where the child can go. So the parent has this too. And that's what we try to talk. If we find, a delay, so then we work with the parents as well. But mostly I just encourage the parents to do it because it's a good thing to know. As a parent, I want to know how my children were doing. And my son is 28. My daughter is 26. And when I moved here, I learned about Parents as Teacher. And I remember the first screening, my children didn't speak English. So it was good to have these tools that help me to work with them and, gain those knowledge and those skills that my kids will need when they go to school. Yeah. And also being from another country, I come from Puerto Rico, it was good to have that to help me and get into the community as well.
Right.
That helped me.
And I was thinking about how I was in a master's program for adolescent development and had this background in working with families and children. And I still didn't know that my daughter had a speech delay. And so it's not something you're supposed to know because that's a very specific skill. And so you have speech therapists, of course, but you also have parent educators that go through multiple levels of training to help you identify what words and what sounds that children are supposed to be making. So I just thought it was cute. Like, oh, she has a little raspy voice and she's saying things a little bit off, but she'll grow out of it. And then it wasn't until she went to kindergarten where they said, actually, she should be saying this word and she should have these sounds. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll work with her at home. They're like, well, we're past the point of working with her at home. But I also felt like they didn't have a plan to where I could support her. And so that piece sometimes is missing when you don't have a home visitor, which is typically only in early childhood. And so you're kind of at the will of the school to do the work for you. And you don't get to kind of be a part of that. You're just trusting, which I did trust, but I also, as a parent, wanted to do the best I could to help further that learning. And so I think that's the benefit of home visiting. And when people get out of early childhood and they don't have access to home visiting anymore, it's like, well, now I need a coach. And so we've talked about how to help families transition well through that kindergarten, first grade, through those years without when they don't have a home visitor. And so we work with other organizations to build that parent community.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that, I know that you mentioned that sometimes there can be reservations for families maybe not wanting to send their baby to an early childhood center because they're afraid they can't report back. Yeah. It's a lot with that. Do you find resistance sometimes with people being afraid to have a home visitor in their home? And how, as a community, can we amplify? Clearly, you mentioned all the benefits, but maybe trying to combat some of that, negative, outlook on that and replace it with positive, and that there is no judgment.
Yeah, I think there's so many layers to that. Arleen mentioned something earlier just about having representation. So the first thing is when you have a home visitor that speaks your language, especially if you're Spanish speaking, you have that baseline thing. This is somebody that lives in your neighborhood or is from a neighborhood like yours, and all of those things begin to make families feel more comfortable. And so if you're more comfortable, you notice that the barriers start to go down. They're still there because we're still part of a larger ecosystem that has done harm to families. And so that's not our intention, but there has been harm done. And so we have to hold the fact that that's happened to communities, and the community still needs support. And how do you merge those two? And so representation really matters for families. And then I think there are, as much as you want to amplify home visits, you want to name the things that have been harmful. And so helping a family understand that. And usually when we start going to the home, you'll notice a family is cleaning up, their house smells.
Okay, so see, that's how I think I would, that's my reaction.
I can't have you come because I don't have time to clean up. It's usually what we get. And I did that too. I was introduced to home visiting when my daughter entered kindergarten for my younger children. Actually by Angela DeWilde, the founder of Start at Zero. So, but I didn't want home visiting because I was I don't know her. I don't know what she's about. She's some kind of social worker and she's going to come take my kids. There's no reason for her, or she wouldn't have gotten them because there's no reason for them to be taken. But that was the fear that I had.
Yes.
And that was a very valid fear. And so I said, oh, that's really cute, but I'm not going to participate in that. And so there were other ways to get involved, like a play group. And so I did have a community of moms. So I was well, that's nice that they have a play group, but I don't need that. But then I found out they had a parent group. And I was oh, well, I kind of would like to go and specifically talk about parenting. And so maybe I'll go to that. And so it wasn't until my third kind of touch point, because I had gotten comfortable with the organization. I'd heard it talked about in the community. And this was before I was even on staff. So this is a true story.
Yeah.
And so then I went to that event and I saw the parents were involved and engaged. And some of the people that had been in home visiting were getting ready to join staff. And I was whoa, what kind of organization is this where all of this can happen at one time and it be really diverse? And so I was very attracted to that. And so I think that is what made me say yes. And so that's the same thing that makes families say yes. After we spend time with them, they hear the name, they think I could use a little bit of extra support with my baby. So maybe I'll give them a chance. And so developmental screenings, what we used to call learning checkups, are an easy way for them to say, okay, let me dip my toe in, see what they're talking about. Okay, I liked them. That experience was helpful to my baby. Okay, so you can come back. And then we kind of define the relationship. And then you have that home visitor that is going to come to your home weekly or bi-weekly to support you and your child, because these are 2-generation approach. We're helping the parent with their goals, whatever the goals that they have for themselves or for their children. And we're helping support the child's development. And so I think that's unique about home visiting too, because typically your kid goes to school and the school should be concerned about your child's development and just making sure you're on the same page, but we actually interact with the parents for their child's development. And that's a little different, and I think a highlight of home visiting. And it's voluntary for our programs.
Okay, so I appreciate you sharing your personal testimonial, because I think that is where the connectivity is. I feel like we're going to have parents that listen to the podcast that's going to resonate with them. Literally the exact words of this was my fear. She just named it. Yeah. And it's not what happened. Yeah. But also laying out the buffet of options to be able to engage. And so those play groups, talk to me a little bit more about those and what that looks like. Where can they take place? Where do they typically take place? How long are they?
We have playgroups. We usually have them on Wednesdays mornings from 10:30 till 12. It's 90 minutes they last. My way to look at playgroup for me is a visit, but in a bigger way. We have all the parts of a visit. We just have an activity that parents do with their child, and as in a community, we bring developmental information while we're doing the activity with the parents. and we read a book. So it's about community. So we all get together. One of the activities we have that I love was we have this big paper, brown paper, and everybody sat on the floor and we paint and we did colors. And it was so nice to see everybody sharing and talking, and all the parents. So we build a community of parents that they can talk also about with other parents, because sometimes as a parent, you think you're the only one who's going through that. You're not.
Exactly.
So this is a community. This group connections build a community as well. They learn a skill that they can practice, and they can come back next week and we talk about it, how it was the activity, how you did it at home, and next week we do another activity. They last for 12 weeks.
Okay.
It's for the community. You don't have to be part of a Star Zero to participate in group connections. So people think they have to. Also for screenings, you don't have to be part of Star Zero to do a screening with us. We're going to be beginning group connections in September 8th. Yes.
Yeah. We'll get it linked up.
I have to think about it. September 8th, and we're going to be having them Wednesdays and Fridays. Okay. And we invited the whole community. But like I said, it's a good place to, as a parent, like Dr. Wade did. She went to one and she saw how it was to learn about us, to learn what we do.
Right.
And you can see it there. And the parent educators, there's always a parent educator in the group connections there present.
Yeah. And I would say this is not a new concept of families getting together to play, right?
Yes,
and so
right.
you're already interacting, just meeting somebody at their home, but then you don't have those same barriers where, I need to clean up. I need to provide snack. I need to make sure I'm out back before nap time. Like all of these different things as to why people don't come out. It gives them an outlet to be there together. And then our hope for groups is that we get some parents trained in the evidence-based curriculum that we use, so that they can take the model and then use it in their own neighborhoods and maybe in the libraries and things like that. Because sometimes people do want to add a little extra, like, okay, I want to read a book. There's a theme that I want to have. I want to have a water day, and I want to talk about water safety. And so parents come up with those ideas themselves, and then we are able to like run with it. And so it's like, what do you want to do? And then we can take it and run with it. So we'll have some trainings for parents and those that want to get into the early childhood field, but aren't quite ready to work a little bit yet, but still want to engage and keep that resume up, so that when they are ready to return to work, they'll have some skills, some additional skills.
Right. Well, and that's part of that like spiral sometimes for us as parents, right? Is that we can operate in a silo, and then we don't have enough, connectivity. And so bridging that gap by providing that, I think is really important. So just for clarification, the Parents as Teachers model that you all are using at Start at Zero, a Parents as Teachers program in a school district, as you mentioned that you were at before. Hopefully, if you're new to Kansas City, or if you move away from Kansas City, you're going to be able to access these programs wherever it is that you're at. And it's all free, correct?
Yep.
Like there's no charge to come to the play group. There's no charge to have a home visitor come and talk to you about your child. Like,
there's no charge for screening either. Nothing.
Yes, nothing. We want to make sure that families know that should never keep them from reaching out and engaging.
Yeah. And I'll say for our programs too, we encourage parents and families to share that information with once they get the screening, because there's a lot of places that do screening. I've even done screenings and didn't get the results. And I was like, is she okay? Is she not okay? Like, what's up here? And so our biggest thing is making sure that the parents get the information and that they can make sense of it. And so we read those results and we talk about where those areas are. And then, like Arleen said, we bring the activities and then we follow up the next week. Did you do the activity? How was it? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your kid? What other activities do you want to try? And that's that partnership that we continue to do with the families. And so when they finish with home visiting, they're really like engaged and excited to interact with whatever their next move is, usually a school district or a center or something like that, because they're used to being asked what their opinion is and what their perspective is and how they want to engage their kid. And so while programs are everywhere, that's one of the core components that should exist in a home visiting program, that it's about the partnership. Whether that's specifically in the mission or not, it should still be about partnership.
Right. And so then again, birth. So if I've got two kiddos, my kiddos are 22 months apart. So in theory, we could have been doing some developmental screenings on both kids during those home visits and having an opportunity to discuss each child and where they are.
Yep.
Yes.
And we start as early as 1 month. We usually do 6 weeks, a little bit older. But some of the things I noticed, I worked with a lot. We were prenatal to kindergarten entry typically. And some programs just around the nation, they go through kindergarten. And so right now we kindergarten entry for our programs. But prenatally, we're already talking about the development that's taking place. And there's games. So one of my favorite prenatal games is tummy tag, so you tap your stomach 3 times on one side and then you move your hands to the other side of your belly. And then if you do that at the same time every day, you'll notice like the baby ready to play. So this is the game that you play prenatally. They're waiting on the kick or they wait on the tap, and then you feel them kick, and then they follow your hands along your belly. And so that's one of my favorite games to play prenatally. And people are like, what? Like, I can't believe the baby could do that. And so that's I think the essence of home visiting. Like, what? I didn't know my kid could do that. Yes. What else can they do? And so getting that excitement about what the kid can do is really important for us. And to see parents' eyes light up and the kids be proud of themselves. It's like, this is magical.
I absolutely love that. Okay. So we've talked a lot about what that looks like. Initially to either engage from a playgroup standpoint or invite someone into your home immediately if you're comfortable with that. And the beginnings of what those developmental screenings can look like. So I think we're going to take a break for just a moment. But when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit more into screenings. And then maybe if kiddos aren't meeting their milestones, what that looks like and what our next steps will be. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We are back from our break, and we're so glad that you're still with us. We were talking a lot during the break. And so I want to bring the audience into our conversation that we were having during that time frame. And really, we started off, Dr. Wade, talking about evaluations and that process and qualifying for first steps, or maybe not qualifying for first steps, needing to wait, just all of that. So in the first half, we talked about those developmental screenings and what that looks like. So now let's really dive into, okay, it looks like maybe we're not quite where we were hoping to be. What comes next?
So I'll talk about that, and then you can talk about what comes next after that.
Perfect. I love
That's
it.
good.
So typically, we do the screening and we're sharing the results with the family, and we're saying, hey, we're seeing a concern for a delay. So we try not to say they have a delay. So we usually try to say there's a concern for delay because this is just a screening. And so, of course, we need to do further assessment or testing. And so we try to get them comfortable with that language, hearing it from us. And even the screening language, like I said earlier, we would call it a learning checkup because people are familiar with well-child checkups. And so it's like, hey, we're just going to check on your child's development and see where they are. So we saw where they are, and they're not actually meeting some of their milestones. And so we talked to the family about, depending on the cutoff score. So if the cutoff score, we won't get into too many details with that. If it's below that cutoff, then we'll say we would like to consider referring you to another entity that Arleen will talk about. And if it's kind of at the cutoff or like right above it, then we'll say we could rescreen in 3 to 4 months. We'll try some things at home, put some activity kits together for you, and then do a little bit of additional do more visits than we maybe typically would to see if we can catch you up a little bit. And so then we kind of stop there. If a family wants to get referred, then what happens next?
So there's 2 options for the family. We can refer them. We can make the phone call for them or email or online, or the family do it themselves.
Okay.
And one of the programs, if the child is 0 to 3, under 3, it will be Missouri First Steps.
Yes.
3 to 5, it will be with the Kansas City School District or the school district where they live at.
Right.
Yeah, because Missouri First Step, like I said, we give the families the phone number. Either want to do the referral, they can do it themselves, or we can do it. If the family decided to do themselves, next time we go and visit, we ask them, hey, how was that? Did you get someone to talk to you?
Right.
Or the mom said, oh, you know what? Blah, 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 blah. Exactly. Let's leave my phone call right now. That's just something we want our parents. One of the things, is to empower them.
Yes.
We want them to also advocate for their children. And when you have some delays, parents need to be the advocates for their children because they're the ones who are with them 24/7.
Yeah.
I'm there 60 minutes or 90 minutes the most. So we tell them that.
Yeah. Well, and so we were talking about during break, sometimes the stigmas that we're operating within, and how sometimes as parents, we're fearful and maybe even generationally, right?
Yes.
Dr. Wade, you were talking about your sister being around for a while. I have a little sister who's pregnant right now. I know that I was getting a lot of love you, mom. But I was getting a lot of well, I raised 4 kids, right?
Yes.
So
That's true.
part of your all's interactions too are maybe helping families unpack.
Yes.
So I remember one of my favorite and also scariest home visits was just a day where I had to do a lot of paperwork. And so a lot of our paperwork, we just try to have a conversation and ask questions, very relational, very conversational. And so you're not just coming in with a clipboard and checking.
Yes.
So we don't like to do that. We like to build relationship and then we build trust and then we can ask different things and families can choose to answer or not. And so I just had to do a lot of paperwork. It was screenings. You were transitioning the year. And so I went over to the young lady's house and with her daughter there to do our screenings, and she was getting ready to turn 1. Everybody was at the house, grandmas, aunties, cousins, everybody, neighbors probably. And so I was like, man, they think I'm a social worker. I got this paperwork. How do I navigate this? And so I came in, my friendly self. Every parent educator brings a bag and we have toys in the bag and we have our screenings. And so we check in, we do an opening, as we call it. We check in, how you doing? How did you follow through with the activities from our last visit? What's on your mind today? Here's what I have to talk about. And we got to do a few screenings. Does that sound good? And they're like, yeah, good. Let's go. So I'm doing screenings and the whole family is watching me. And I'm like, okay, can she roll the ball? Or, I've been away from the specific home visits for a while.
They're
but
just
yeah. And I'm like, okay. And so she did great. This is a mom I met at 37 weeks prenatal. And so, she did great. So I'm seeing her to her first birthday. And then I was like, I think I need to have you come over and check on my grandbaby. And I was like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And so I started giving my number out and we started talking and laughing. And we had been, throughout the visit and the screening doing that. But then it was, okay, now I saw what you did. I liked it. I think some of my other grandkids need this as well. And so that was exactly what you want a home visit to be, where you're providing high quality services, but you're also reducing barriers for an entire community. And then again, they didn't know if I was specifically a social worker or not. Some families will call us the kid's teacher. Your teacher is here. And it's no, actually I'm your teacher technically, and you're your child's teacher,
Right.
But we get your teacher is here, your support is here, your case manager is here. And so we are just parent educators. And we actually recently changed the name of our parent educators because they do more than that. So they're doing community health worker work. We're supposed to get trained as doulas because there's just a lot of skill that's required from prenatal to 5. And so while they wouldn't be doing all of the doula work, they would be doing the educational pieces to make sure families are ready for births. And so they know what questions to ask the hospital or the birth center, or if they want to have a home birth, they are prepared to do any of those things. So
so much empowerment and advocacy. And amplifying all of that. So if the parent does follow through with that first steps evaluation, and let's say that first steps needs to come in, do you all mind providing a little bit of what that looks like? Because first steps is still going to be a home-based opportunity to a certain degree. I know that it can look different depending on, some programs or what parents need. But that can be a more in-depth visit specific to maybe what's going on with your child.
Yes. Like I said, ages stages questionnaire is a parent-based screening. So it's like a snapshot of how the baby is doing. When first step goes, they do a different screening that goes more in depth. So when the child qualified, then, first step in, and the visits are a little different. It also family-based visits, but it's mostly like a therapy visit that they do. They go into the home if the child has speech delay, for example. Usually they send like a speech pathologist to work with that child in the home.
Okay. So so still gonna be inviting a expert professional to come in, but again, like you're saying, they're gonna be there really working on those target goals. That is actually gonna be not an IEP because we're talking about a little one, but a first steps, an IFSP, right? Is that kind of the yes. Which I know again, like all the terminology, everything that comes with it, and I hope that parents know that like no one expects you to know all of these things. We were discussing earlier that even as professionals in the space, we can miss things with our own kiddos. I mean, we had to take one of our kiddos in for a speech evaluation at age 2. And I was working in a center that was, I was, inundated with therapists, right? But there was a wait list and we had to wait, and then he didn't qualify. And then later in school again. So I know that for the super young kiddos, we know that if there's a concern and we've taken the next step and we've contacted First Steps, maybe we've qualified for First Steps. But what about that 4-year-old that maybe that was doing fine and all of a sudden something has kind of popped up? And so then perhaps we're referring them, like you said, to the public school district that they reside in. It's my understanding that it's still an opportunity to perhaps take your child to a school building in your neighborhood for like speech intervention if they qualify. You don't have to enroll. Talk to me about that a little bit. There are some options there, but I don't know that it's always presented that way for our families.
Yes, there are options, like you said. We refer the family, for example, to a school district. We're talking right now. They see the case, they talk to the family. Sometimes the families bring, for example, the ASQ, they did, sometimes some report from the doctors. So the school district, they tend to do their testing as well. And from the testing they do, I know it's a process with the school district. And when it's that process, as a parent educator, I always help my families go through it. Yeah, because it's a lot to understand. They have the red meeting, they have this meeting, they have this meeting. So the parents ask me, why so many meetings? So I sat down with them and I read the paperwork for them and I explain them what is going on. These meetings when you go, and something that you said is like when you're a parent and somebody told you something is wrong, your brain goes like, boom,
fight or flight.
Shut down. So it's good to have somebody to help you. Go through that process. So parents, educators, I've done it. And let me say, I love doing that. I help them through the process. And when all the process is finished and blah, blah, if they have an IEP, depends, they can go to the preschool program, or it's in a speech delay, they can do it to speech at the school. It depends on the case and it depends on the results of the screenings. And that's also any screenings that you have will be like that. It depends in the school district.
Right.
And it really takes a lot to qualify for those services. So then you have a lot of families, children just sitting on the edge of like they don't qualify for First Steps and they don't qualify for services through the district. So then you're expected to have the home visitor that is sometimes not as experienced. So typically the home visitor position is like a para in a school. So like you have some experience, but you still like may not have the degrees and additional training and so on and so forth. So what we've tried to do is elevate, so there's a CDA that you can get, Child Development Associate, where you can have a degree in child and family development, or you get the doula certification, or you get, there's a couple of different organizations that we have professional memberships with, and they offer free training so that we can get as much training and experience that's affordable as possible, so we can help those families that are really on that edge that still really need additional services from a speech therapist. We're, even with all our training and support, we're not speech therapists. And so while these things are designed to help kids get ready, when they're on that edge, they kind of stay on that edge. So the best we can do is hopefully not have them slip further behind. And so that's a threat because they still need programming, but because it's so limited, the space is limited. The wait list for even Children's Mercy the developmental clinic,
it's a lot.
The wait list is long, so people are having to go private, and then you have to have money to pay for that. And so if families don't have money to do that, and you have stigmas around even identifying concerns or delays for concerns, then you're just up a creek.
Yes.
Well, I think that goes back to everything that you all do, right? Which is cultivating relationships with families, empowering them to, even with their peers and their neighbors and their friends that they're meeting at the park, to say, oh yeah, no, totally do that. Or, oh no, hold on, you need to talk to somebody else. Yeah. And again, I mean, like I said, we had an evaluation done. We didn't qualify at age 2. And then, first grade, I'm at those parent-teacher conferences going, okay, listen, we gotta look at this again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But when families come to me every single time, and again, even my being so close to these things, you forget and you need people to lean on, but you got to do it in writing.
Yes.
You've got, once we're into this, so again, just to read, like, you all are there working with families and that, prenatal to age 5. But then once a kiddo starts kindergarten officially, is it fair to say that that's a bit of a graduation from your services? You may still be in the family's home, but you're not going to be providing.
Sadly, yes.
Yes, I know, right? Advocacy for, however, I have middle schoolers now. I feel like I need some. But,
we love to have a parent coaching program. Just put that out there, especially when we have parents that are representative of the communities that we serve in the city. So, we love to do that, especially at least up to age 8. I think 12 would be appropriate, but we're going to stick to our mission, but partner with other organizations that do that. So I think that's where collaboration comes in at. And so I've recently talked to Parent Power Lab about how, you had Spark on a few weeks or months ago, about how we can transition families well, because we kind of go from your prenatal, and of course, little Keisha is going to be reading on 3rd grade level.
Yes.
And then you get to 3rd grade and then there's a problem. Like, what happened? 3rd grade reading level is not happening, or I don't even know that if it's happening or not. And so there's some breakdown in transition. And so we don't want people to just leave our program and be like, okay, see you later. Like, all the play groups that you attended, all the celebratory events that you had with other families, you now have to build your parent community. And typically it may be cousins that you have at the school or something, or, friends that go to some of the same schools, but it's typically not a hangout or not a celebration of our kids. It is, how do we get a fundraiser going for the school, or how do we support the teachers? But it's the developmental aspects, especially of social emotional development. There's not a lot of education for that. And so you have people that we're really preparing to be great, engaged parents in the school district that we don't have the same transitional support for. And so it starts with those conversations, from holding their hands through different processes of what it looks like to get your kid with further evaluation and testing, and then continue to have that paperwork. I just found out my son's plan was not in his file. Well, I have it, but why isn't it in his file?
I know what.
So he has a hearing aid. And so when we talk about the stigmas, I work with parents all the time. We talk about it, we advocate for it. And then he needed a hearing aid. And the first thing I thought is, people are going to be so mean to him, because he has this delay, he's with his hearing, his developmental delay with his hearing. And people they did make fun of him. Even I had a teacher that was like, is your hearing aid turned up? And it's
not okay.
So now I got to go. Okay. But then because I've advocated for my other daughter with speech, and I had parents that supported me and told me hey, this is what you can do. I felt like she needed to graduate, but they were like, no, she's going to do it for the whole year. And I was like, but does she have to? And so those conversations that I had in early childhood to get my kids ready for kindergarten are the same conversations that we're having. And then you have very involved and engaged parents that also tap other people on the shoulder and say, hey, girl, they should be doing this. You should be doing this. And that's where that support comes in. So true. I feel like it is hard to get your kids paperwork and get everything processed and make sure they have the support that they need. But then it does become pretty like check the box. But then also, how are you doing as a parent? Since this is a podcast for parents, how are you really doing with navigating the concerns that you have for your kid, your multiple children, and advocacy at each year? I think I saw somebody post, all right, I got to get with the teachers again and make sure my kid is getting everything they need every year. So it's not done. So I know that we accomplished the milestones and get them in the therapies that they need. And we're like, okay, whew. But there's still more to it than that. Like, at least until they get to 18, and depending on what the concerns are, maybe longer.
Well, and so that kind of like takes me to the last, my cheat sheet here of like things that we want to make sure that we touch on, right? Because we want parents to hear them, and we want this conversation to continue. We want you to hear the conversation that we're having. We, of course, would love for anyone to reach out to any of us. We do live here. We all, and we've raised kids. We have kids. We have all of the above, nieces and nephews and cousins and neighbors and friends. But, transitioning to kindergarten through that IFSP to an IEP process, there's always, I think, a lot of pressure on parents to have their child prepared. But in all actuality, Dr. Wade, especially everything that you were just saying, I think we need to maybe pan out a little bit and talk more about how to be prepared as a parent to advocate and approach, unfortunately, every single school year to ensure. So less about, you're going to get the new shoes and you're going to get a haircut and a backpack and it is important. And you're going to be excited about it because you want them to be excited about it. You're going to talk positively about it and all of that. Right. But sometimes the transition, being prepared for a transition, can be being ready to advocate for all of these things, in which you all, when individuals come into your program and when they have the blessings of having an advocate in their homes, you're really helping them with that, reminding them, walking them through it. That's powerful.
Yeah. Yes. That's what I was, one of the things, was saying earlier, since our program is that empowering our parents, giving, to become advocates of their children. And it's difficult, like you said, because you don't know how the system works. So we build this partnership with parents in hopes, that the partnership that we have give them those tools, because that's our goal, is giving these tools. So when they leave our program, that is the saddest part when they leave. They continue. Our parents, like Dr. Wade said, because we are the teachers of the parents, our parents continue having these tools that they learn from their parent educator in those early years when they go to kindergarten and so on.
Right.
And it's something that we always do with our educators, and the Parents and Teacher program is built like that, having these tools to work with parents to do that. And that's something that we take very to our heart and very into us, because we are parents too. And we know how difficult sometimes it is to navigate the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, unfortunately, we're coming up on time because I feel like, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that I'm like, Nina, we're going to be messaging you after this, because I think that, the continuation of this conversation within early childhood, but then also just through school, is a lot of these stigmas, a lot of the double standards that we were talking about earlier, the judgment sometimes that can come down, and our community and maybe, not fully embracing or understanding how things. So I think that needs to be a continued follow-up to all of that. I thank you both so much. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. I am honored to have been able to host this podcast, even though I know Nina's a fan favorite. And such a great conversation. I hope our listeners are walking away with some very helpful insight into early interventions, early childhood, home visiting, and special education, along with development support services in these early years. We want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in, and we invite you to stay connected with us at Show Me KC Schools. And until next time, ladies, thank you.
And thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Show Me KC Schools is committed to providing you with vital information that supports you while you support your child on their educational journey. Connect with us on social media at SMKCS and on YouTube at Show Me KC Schools and on all your favorite podcast platforms.